in Santa Fe this morning, and Derek Fisher and I, Andrea Fisher, would like to welcome you to our first Indian Market Show. Sandra Victorino is here today, and we will be getting to her in just a few moments. This is the first show that we're doing this Indian market season. It's called Women of Distinction. And Sandra, whose work that you see here, is our featured artist. And she has been able to come and give us a nice little demonstration today. If you notice, I have a mask on. Yesterday, our governor mandated that masks to be worn at all times, even though we've been requiring them in the gallery ever since the pandemic started. Sandra is one of the best ever Acoma potters and painters, and as you can see from the pieces in front of me, they're absolutely gorgeous. The other women of distinction that we have include Jackie Stevens, Doris Sepe, and Jean Sami. As we move down here, all of these very contemporary, soft, lovely clay pieces are Jackie Stevens' work. Jackie hasn't worked for about a decade now, but her pieces continue to stimulate the fun and the laughter, especially when she decides to do some fun things like this blue one with the wonderful sort of pink flapped open top. Jackie's work is truly timeless. If we move down here, this is the work of Jean Sami. Jean Sami is from Hopi. She is no longer working also, but again, one of the great painters from Hopi. She is the great-great-granddaughter of Nampeo of Hano, who was the person who really changed the art form of Hopi pottery from either utilitarian, then a curio that is really a lovely testament to the beautiful designs of Hopi. This lovely piece was done by Helen Shupla. We laughingly call her Helen Mellon because that was what she was known for more than anything, and her pieces were from Santa Clara Pueblo. We've included Tonita Roybal, another great potter, who unfortunately passed away in the 1940s. She was a contemporary of Maria Martinez's, and her work is so prized because it is so well done. And I'm sure that Maria would have had a little bit of competition if Tonita had survived beyond that. Over in the corner is Dorothy Toribio, and coincidentally, Dorothy is Sandra Victorino's niece. And Sandra is Dorothy's niece. Dorothy was Sandra's teacher and support system, and really gave Sandra the background to be able to make some of these incredible pieces. Of course, we could never have an exhibit of those who are no longer with us without including Maria Martinez. She's the one who made all of this work possible. And also included is Teresita Naranjo, she was a great carver. Mela Youngblood, and Mela was the mother who died of breast cancer in 1981. And she is the mother of Nancy Youngblood and Nathan Youngblood, two of the finest contemporary potters alive today. Elizabeth Naranjo, who did all these wonderful big jars, she's a tiny little lady, but the bigger pieces are so difficult to do, and it was really quite wonderful that she was able to leave us with so many great pots. Doris Sepe, whose pieces are along here, a great potter from San Ildefonso Pueblo, who was really famous for her Avano. Her teacher was her mother-in-law, Rose Gonzalez. And Dora's no longer working, and she has done she's done an incredible body of work. We're now going to move over to what I feel is the saddest part of this exhibit. The potters who we loved and admired and who we lost to COVID. Christine McCourse, I mean, there are no words that can describe her. Her pots are not only beautifully constructed, but they are in many, especially the more recent ones, are architectural wonders. And Christine was one of the few potters that transcended the being, just only known as a Native American potter. Christine is now ranked among the greatest of American ceramicists. There was a fabulous, wonderful article about her passing in the New York Times. Gladys Paquin from Laguna Pueblo, who did these incredible, wonderful Laguna pieces, and Madeline Naranjo, a dear lady from Santa Clara Pueblo. Well, now that you have a little idea of what this show is all about, we're going to head to the wonderful artist who is alive and well. And I'm sorry for the background noise, but there have been some really strange goings on this street in the last 24 hours. 2 doors down from us is Starbucks, and it caught on fire. And then subsequently, right after that, there was a huge water main break right near Starbucks. So we've dealt with lots of construction things. I apologize for the noise. But let's go over and take a look. Well, hello, Miss Sandra Victorino.
Hello, everybody out there.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you here and to see all your beautiful, beautiful work. And thank you so much for really, taking all the time and the effort and all your skill and your talent to make this wonderful show happen. Well, maybe you can give us a little idea of what you're up to here.
Alrighty. Well, I started this morning on this piece. And these are already handmade and traditional handmade.
And by traditional handmade?
With traditional clay, with everything, that has to be processed into making the clay or the pieces.
So they're not thrown on the wheel?
No.
And they're not molded?
No, they're not molded.
Tell us how you do make them.
They're hand-built with hand coil, with the gores and my paddles and... the pieces. It depends if we got the open piece and then the seed pots. The seed bases take more work of, with different kind of tools that I use to make them form into their shapes.
Well, you don't stick your finger in there?
No. Just a little one.
Just a little one, huh?
Yeah. just as long, I have it formed up as to what shapes I would like. Like I call these the seed vases, and these are the pottery shape, the oval shape.
So what we're looking at here is a piece where you've dug the clay, where you have cleaned the clay to get all the gunk, the stuff that doesn't belong
bunch of
in
roots.
clay.
There's always a bunch of roots, and other like
little pebbles maybe,
Yeah,
or little
that-
sticks, and so it's all been cleaned.
Yeah,
and
been cleaned.
and then you knead the clay, so you want to get rid of any air bubbles
Yes.
and make sure that it's as clean as it possibly
Yes.
can be. Because I understand that when they're fired, if you leave, will lose
Yeah.
the piece to
Yeah.
cracking or exploding.
Oh yes. That's done.
And so once you've coiled the pot and formed the pot into the shape you like, you polish the pot.
Yes. Then I polish the
And
pot.
tell me a little bit about polishing.
Okay, this is the polish that the white that I put on it.
What is that stuff?
It's white sand. It's
White sand.
White
Looks like,
dirt.
It looks like milk.
I know it looked like milk, but we use this too for like our whitewash in our homes that we use up at Acoma. This is like whitewash, but we use it for to cover polish the pottery with. And I have my polishing stone right here. Is what I use once I put it on, and then I polish it to the smoothness, so where the paint will go on very easily and softly, so it won't be so rough.
Now that pot you're working on, is
Yes.
it wet or is it dry?
It's dry. It's dry. I've already put on my polish on it enough to where it will.
And how long does it take
Like what
to dry?
To dry, it takes like I let them dry like overnight or the day, in the sun outside of my house. I would leave them out there to dry to make sure they're pretty dry enough to polish too. And then after polishing too, I would take them out to dry and make sure that they're shiny enough to work with. So I put on the paint. So that's how they all come out like this, with the design and the polishing. So.
And with the weather the way it's been,
Oh, the way the weather's been, it's been pretty hard. So if it's too moist outside or humid, I would put them in my oven. In the stove oven to just dry them, just to.
it gives a new meaning to the word cooking pots. You're
Yeah,
cooking
like
your
a-
pots.
So I will put them in my oven like a half of the day, and make sure that they're dry enough to paint, and so they won't have any too much what do you call it, moisture in it. So where it'll polish, and then I let the polish dry, and then I paint. It's fun.
Well, good. So how long does it take you to make a piece like that?
Well, I usually make like up to like 6 to 5 pieces a day, or 2 to 3 days it takes me, because it's a process of making.
So you don't do one pot
No.
from the, go dig the clay for the.
No.
Uh-huh.
The process of making a pottery is when you get the clay, mix the clay, dry the clay, grind the clay, and then once you let it sit for a couple of days, the clay, you have to sure enough to where it's smooth enough to work with, and the texture of it's like a really soft clay. Once it's moist enough and soft enough to work with, and that's when it's really good and tender to work. I make them all into little balls, and then once I start, I start working around with them and make all my coils and build from the bottom up, and use my Tupperware pots.
Oh, here we go. Yes, modern
Using my Tupperware
conveniences.
pots.
This may be a super ancient
Yeah.
technique, but you certainly depend on a few modern things now and then. Well, before you had Tupperware, all you had were the pots that you
Yeah,
made. So, yeah.
And I really didn't have no broken pieces, old pieces, so I didn't have any. So I just thought I'll use something simple and easy enough to use for myself, So which I thought I'll use Tupperware pots. And then I will work on. It takes time to work out my shapes of my pots, because I would build it up to a certain point, and then and work from there. And then once I do the top part, then I would turn the whole pottery clay over and then start working on the bottom of the pottery to have my shape come out on the piece.
So you said that in one day you can.
I can do like 3, 4, and then the next day, then I still have to sit them overnight.
Well, isn't that really speedy? Because I know a lot of potters that they make about 24 pots a year, and
I've been working with the clay like for close to 40 years, so, and just like I know what to do and how to work with my clay and make my shapes of my pots, and especially on the small ones too. I make like more for my small.
And so you make those 3 pots in one day, and they have. Then you do more work on them.
Yeah, then do more work.
Do you have to wait a few days before they dry a little?
Yes, wait a couple more days before they dry. And then once they dry, then, do the polishing. That takes another 2 more days. And then once they're, dry and polished and everything, so then I start the painting,
Now tell me, how fragile is that?
It's very fragile because it's...
So if you banged it into the table, it would just fall to pieces?
Yes, it will crack or, and then once it's cracked again, you're going to have to do the whole thing again, and you can't, like have it cracked or anything, because once the firing is done, it'll show, it'll come out and show where you hit the pot.
So you can't fix it?
No.
Have you ever done that?
No.
You've never banged it into anything?
I've hit it. It's hitting, other pieces, but if you hit that crack and then you don't know where it is, and then once it's fired, then it'll show.
Yeah.
So, and
So what you do?
You can just hear it like this once you knock on it a little, and then you can hear the crack in the pot. So and you don't know where the crack is. So once you have that crack, you have to redo it again.
Yeah.
And remelt the whole thing. Break it back down and then use the clay again. Because I reuse all my clay that I've already had grinded and everything.
So if for example that pot cracks before it's been fired, do you just break it up and soak it in water?
And reuse it
and begin again?
Yes, redo it again. Making the process again. So that's why you have to be very careful how you handle the pieces, especially when you have them laying out, and letting them dry so where they won't get, hit or anything like that.
Well, my understanding is then that the clay must be very precious.
Yes, it is.
For lots of reasons. I mean, maybe because it takes so much labor. And a shovel and strong arms and certainly not a weak back, and then all the time to ferret out all of the rocks and the roots and everything else that goes with it, and then to have something happen like a crack. Yeah,
it is very hard. You gotta really know how to manage your clay and work with the clay, and take care of it as Mother Nature is.
And also. I'm sure there's some religious significance that go along with that also.
Well,
is that something you can talk about, or is that sort of none of our business?
None of business.
It's not our business. Oh, okay.
But I know I could talk to you about my sea vases. It's my favorite, part of making that kind of shape.
Yeah.
But, these are for, special occasions and tradition stuff.
Yeah, well, oftentimes people ask about pottery making, and I think our 2 different cultures, yours and mine, look at pottery making differently. I mean, we look at the result, and we value the result.
Yes.
That's where, in fact, all the value is in my culture is how nice it looks and how much I paid for it. With you, if I am correct, the value is in the process.
Yes, it is. It's in the process.
Where you get the clay and what your interaction is with Mother Nature and how this is a religious endeavor and all your traditions that go with it.
Yes,
and then sort of once it's over, well, then you can sell it because
No.
the value is already, you've already experienced the value.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. But like if we use our potteries for special tradition, we cannot never sell them. We have to keep them at home.
And do they stay in your
Yes.
family, or
Yes,
or are they something that is eventually destroyed?
No, we usually have to keep them in the family and hand it down to the next, grandkids or the next family to the families.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Well, tell us a little bit about the painting that you're doing.
Okay, the painting is from a rock, and the rocks are like we've gotten these rocks from
Which
the
one?
ground.
Which ones are the rocks?
These are the rocks.
Because that looks like a big rock to me
It
that
is
you're
a big
working
rock. I
on.
usually use this one to mix my the other clay like this, and I use a lot of rocks, and I have a lot of them that were handed down from Auntie Dot. So, and she told me how to use them and how to rub them and mix it.
But by the way, Auntie Dot is Dorothy Toruvia.
Yeah, so
How long has Dorothy been gone?
it's probably like almost 8 years. Close to
8
9
years, right? And she was your teacher.
Yes. And happy birthday, Auntie Dot.
Today's her
Your
birthday?
Today's
her
birthday.
birthday. Oh, how absolutely wonderful.
Isn't it?
And
tomorrow.
and you can see in our show that we have a couple examples of her work. And you can also see that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And I'm sure that she was a great influence on you.
was.
And what a lovely, lovely lady. I have lots of fun stories about her, but we're talking about you today. So we'll save those Dorothy Trivio fun stories.
For one thing for sure is I always took her advice, and she said, my daughter, don't you ever give it up, keep our tradition going in the family for our future, for the kids' future. So I always remember that. And she said, like when we come to the market or, for the Indian market, she says, just keep our tradition going and keep everybody happy and do your best to show what you have and what you can do in your talent and in our, society of markets.
You being the tree, you have a few apples that fell. I mean, your son Cletus is a potter as well, and so the beat goes on.
Yes, it does.
And Auntie Dot was obviously correct, and I'm sure she would be extremely proud of Cletus because he does really wonderful work as well. But so we're looking at this big slab in front of us, and tell us about that, and then tell us about the things that are on top of it.
Well, these are mostly all the paints. This is the orange paint right here, and the white, and then the black. Once it's firing, the paint would turn black, and it colors. It turns to different colors. As you see, my potteries are turned different colors than what they look like right now. And once the firing is done, it'll turn its color.
Well, now those rocks, did you just found them on the ground?
No, they're from Acoma, from the mesa, from back of Acoma. And we have like secret places where, they allow us to go get our paints and our clay. So these are mostly where they come from, is from Acoma, in the back of the mesa over there, where we all have special places where we go dig our paints and our colors,
Oh, so we can hear the secret? You know, like you go down the road about 15 miles, and on the left-hand side there's a big bush, and that's where they come from?
But you can look for the yuccas as the bush.
They're minerals. Then.
Yes, minerals.
They're
They're all
minerals.
yes, they are.
And so those three rocks that we see, the big red one and the two small ones, they'll both give you the color black?
Yes, that's the color that comes out right here as what you are looking at, the color, and they'll come out black.
And then they'll fire out black. So
Yes.
they must be an iron derivative because
it is.
when you heat iron oxide, it turns black. So not only do you have to be an artist and a laborer, digging all that clay and cleaning all that clay, but you have to be a geologist.
Yes.
And then there's that stuff about talent and artistic ability and a great painter as well. It's quite a diverse, there's a diverse number of professions in order to turn out all these beautiful pieces.
Yes, it
So
is.
what do you do with those rocks?
These rocks is what I used to mix the clay with, the paint with, to make the paint. And this is almost like a real dark orange that goes with the paint. So, and this is the black,
So rubbing them on this big slab
Blick rub, yeah.
that,
yeah,
by the way, took a dolly
Yes.
to bring in because it's so heavy.
Yes.
So by rubbing it on that slab,
It
what you're
rubs
doing
off
is
and-
you're grinding those little rocks?
Yes, I do. I grind them and then I would sample and put water with it. So, because when the air temperature too would thicken the paint, so you always have to stir it up and keep it moist. And one thing good about this too is I like to paint with the yucca, and the yucca is what I use most of the time as I paint. So I always have some on the sides with my yucca brushes. And
So
that's
for
what I do.
so for those of you out there, a yucca is a succulent plant that is native or grows in the southwest here, and it has long, sort of stiff, fleshy leaves with a big thorn at the end of it.
This is all different kind of other.
And so,
brushes.
do you harvest one of those leaves,
Yes.
and then you cut them up?
I cut them up and then like to a certain point over here like this, I would cut it to this far, and then I would make two brushes besides one, or I would make one whole brush to stir up my whole paint. But sometimes the rock would take off the brushes on the yucca, so I would have to use a paintbrush. Yeah.
Now,
so-
there was one piece of yucca that you had that was kind of furry at the end.
Yes.
Well, the inside of the yucca plant is very fibrous.
Yes, there's so many fibrants on this. So what I would use is probably like around 2 to 3 fibers on this. Once I have it cut up and I get 2 of them out. And then I would take off the rest and use the other 2 to use as my paint lines for my lines. Is what I use it for, to
So
design the lines.
you don't go to the craft store and buy a yucca plant.
No, I don't.
Instead, you
I use the yucca. It's traditional.
it's traditional.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure there wasn't a craft store when this whole technique and process and utilitarian effort was put into place.
Yes.
But the red. Now, do you mix the red rock with the other?
Yes, with this,
looking
with the
rocks?
black right here. It's the black, and then the red. I mix them together, and it gets out that really dark red paint.
So the ones you were talking about, the one brush you were talking about with that you paint the lines with,
Yes. This.
that is just a couple hairs,
Yes,
a couple
it
of
is a
fibers
couple of
in there.
hairs, couple of fiber hairs on them.
Yeah, but you look at paintbrushes that you buy in the craft store, and the bristles are always really short. Why is that?
The longer the bristle for me is the longer, like for the longer lines and the even lines, it'll come out really even as, how I have it as this.
Oh, so it can go a greater distance
Yes, it
with a
goes
lot of paint in
yeah,
it.
with a lot of paint on it, and then it'll go a lot longer and finer for the lines to come out. Then once you have that, then you can always get a bigger piece like this in order to stir it up and fill in the bigger designs.
So with this paint, I mean, it seems to me like you were constantly stirring it, not only to keep it the same consistency, but also so that the minerals don't settle out.
Yeah, so they won't settle out, just to one color. And then you need to always make sure it's moist and soft enough to where you can mix the colors together in order for it to come out the color you want.
So it's like the cream that, the milk you buy at the grocery store. You can get the kind with the cream at the top or the kind that's homogenized, and your paint is not homogenized.
No, it's not.
Wow, wow. Well, if you don't mind continuing, the painting that you started, we'd love to see what you do and how you do it. Now, the paint doesn't rub off at this point?
No, it's if you hold it too much at certain places, you're gonna have to go back over the lines and redo it again, to make sure the paint is stayed on to where it's completely on there.
Now, because the clay hasn't been fired and it's very, very dry, does it just absorb?
Yes, it absorbs onto the pottery.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
How can you do that? I mean, look, it's the exact same thickness and it's the exact same distance from the design right below it. Well, I guess I know
It takes
how.
a lot of practice.
Practice, yeah. Oh,
A lot of practice, years of painting.
So how long have you been potting?
I've been potting probably like now close to 50 years.
But you're not that old.
I wish I wasn't, but I am.
Yes, you are. So, I know that this may give away your age a little bit, but especially if you don't want any people to know. But how old were you when you first started working with clay?
I was probably like 21, 22.
Oh, so young.
That's when when Aunt Dot encouraged me to go and do an art show out in Phoenix. Is what my first show was. And ever since then, she had introduced me to a lot of her friends from Phoenix, and and exposed me to doing my artwork. And I started on ceramic the first time as practice.
Oh, and by what Sandra means of ceramics is you can go to the craft store and buy a piece of pottery that has been made, usually molded, a slip cast molded piece of pottery, and then paint it from there. Not the traditionally hand-dug clay and hand-coiled pieces that Sandra does today.
That's how I started. And once I started practicing on learning how to design the pottery and using the yucca brush is what I used. I had to practice learning in order for me to get the design on the pottery. And then once I had finished that process, she said, well, you're going to have to learn how to start making the pottery too. In making the clay, mixing the clay, designing your own potteries on traditional pottery. It takes a lot of things to gather to make your pottery. I had to gather my white, my orange, and my rocks and my yucca and start from there.
Most artists can, if you're a painter, you just go to the art supply store and pick out the colors and the tools that you need. But here, that preparation is probably it takes longer than to make the pot.
Yes, it does. It takes a lot of practice, especially working with yucca. And the yucca is mostly the delicate part of designing the pottery. So.
Well, I can imagine that designing the pot must be very difficult because it isn't a flat surface. It isn't a piece of paper where you can draw it on because the design shrinks and expands as it goes over the surface. I always think of fishnet pantyhose. Where it's your ankle, they're close together, and and other parts of your leg that are fat. The design stretches over just like what you do with your pieces of pottery. I'm truly amazed sitting here watching you just make those perfectly even straight lines. And are you doing every other one, or
yes, every other section? Yeah.
So that it dries. So that it gets absorbed into the clay.
Yes, it does. It gets absorbed into the clay.
What happens if you goof up, and it smears, or there's a glop of paint on it?
I have a Sharpie.
Yeah.
And then you can always just erase the design. See? Like that.
And you'll never see that paint on it again.
No.
Aren't you
And
lucky?
this is how I usually would check my lines or check any mistakes. I go over it. Once it's done in the process of painting it, then I would go over it and check where there might be mistakes and erase it with this. And that's where it comes off. See?
Do you really have to concentrate? Well, obviously you don't because you're talking to me. But you can't.
I'm kind of used to.
You can't watch TV.
No, I listen to TV though, but I don't really pay attention to it just as long as it's something's keeping me, activated or awake and
little background noise, huh?
A little bit of noise.
Wow. So once the lines are painted on the pot. Then what happens?
Then I would do the filling in, once the pottery is done. I would use a brush to then. Just like this is already done, so I would have to do the filling in like this. I have a bigger brush, but I didn't bring them for the filling in.
Oh, so you're like using a white guy brush. Oh, but you obviously didn't have those brushes. Your culture didn't have those brushes hundreds of years ago.
They just used the yuccas.
Just with more hairs in it.
With more hairs and thicker hairs on them, and then you have to know how to hold the piece to the yucca in order to put it on. Let me try this. I'll show you then.
Good. Let's do the traditional stuff. Is much more fun. And if you make a mistake, I'm to blame.
All right, Andrea. This is how we use it.
So, how long will it take you to finish painting that pot?
I'm trying to break my record.
Well, Sandra, by far,
by today,
is the speediest polisher one can ever imagine.
And that's why they don't call me famous for nothing. Right?
Well, when we decided to do the show with Sandra, it wasn't so long ago. Usually, we plan these things a year in advance, easily. But we had no idea what was going to go on with COVID, whether there was going to be an Indian market, whether we were all going to die.
No.
We just didn't have an idea. And then we asked when we found out that, yes, there was a very good chance that Indian market was going to happen, we thought, well, maybe we can do something online. And then when they finally decided that, yes, that they could do something that was, in person, that's when all of this was, decided upon. But with that short amount of time, Sandra brought us 39 pieces.
Holy moly.
And if you look online, all those 39 pieces are displayed. Some of them have already been sold to people that have, that started this morning tuning into our website. But it was absolutely remarkable. I think you're the most prolific potter at Acoma, and certainly, as one can see right now, such a talented and skilled one to boot. But so now you're going to just slowly but surely fill in every single bit.
Yes, I know the design.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Derek go over and find a pot that's in the display that has that pattern on it, so we can get some sort of idea of what the finished product is going to look like. Mr. Derek, can you find a piece of pottery? Well, I'll go find one. Well, maybe what I should do is I should introduce you to Derek, and he can say hello for a little bit, and maybe I can hunt something down. Let me go check.
Okay.
So, hey Sandra, how's it going?
It's going well. Is there something can I say something to you?
Oh, okay.
I wanted to say congratulations to my niece who will be getting married next month, and to congratulate her and her husband, gonna-be husband, and may you both succeed in everything you accomplished and love about having your kids. So I just wanted to say that because I know she's gonna be saying, why did you say it? Olivia Musso and Eric Lacario. Congratulations on your wedding.
Well, that's really wonderful.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. See? That's what's going to look like.
She can't see it.
Okay. That's what the process will be once the painting is done on the pot. So this is the design that I'm putting onto this one, and the feathers is going to be on top and the checkerboard on the bottom.
Well, that'll give you an idea of what the finished product looks like. So after you're finished painting all of this, Sandra, then what happens?
Then once it's finished painted, then the firing will take place. The firing.
Tell us about how your pots are fired.
I had to start firing on the kiln, from the kiln, because we had there was we used to have commoner and old pottery pieces that we would use to fire the pieces, me and Auntie Dot. But most of the pieces like that are hard to find now that, everything's changed. So, especially like the commoner. And, we can't go out there and go pick those commoner anymore, so I started having to fire with the kiln. So that's how my pieces are all fired, is through the kiln.
So your cows don't poop anymore?
No, I guess not. I have no more cows either. We used to have cattle a long time ago.
I think a lot of people at Acoma had a lot of cows, and so there was lots of material available, I'm sure. And as far as the big pottery shards are concerned, Probably the reason there aren't a lot of big ones is because you don't kiln fire anymore because
Yeah.
it's much more dangerous. I
And
mean,
that-
you don't ground fire anymore because it's much more dangerous than if you kiln fire. And also, as Acoma pottery became more and more precise, the ground firing had the possibility of leaving a fire cloud, which is sort of like a smoky grayer area. And the buying public looked at it as a mistake instead of really celebrating the fact that it was ground fired and that is part of the process. And so Sandra has switched to kiln firing like many, many, many of the potters are, so that you get to see that pure black and white design rather than an area that might have a thin, smoky gray film to it. Now, quite frankly, I love the fire clouds, and the reason I love the fire clouds so much is because it's part of the process, and Mother Nature has had her hand in the design.
Yeah.
And so now she's going to just have to put her hand in, not quite as many, on many pieces as she used to in the past. But so all these pieces, a lot of the pieces from Acoma Pueblo are kiln fired. Do you have your own kiln?
Yes, I do. I barely purchased one about a year ago. So I have my own now.
And what did you do before that?
I used to have to ask or had to go ask someone to go fire for me, that already had kilns,
Uh-huh.
And there's on our reservation they have certain ladies that own a shop. They call it Bonnie's Ceramics, but she's not running it anymore. And so I said, well, I guess they were closed down for the pandemic, and so I just had to get my own and start doing my own firing.
Now, is it a gas kiln or an electric kiln?
It's an electric kiln.
Wow, do you see your electric meter just
Oh, yeah.
spinning
Yes.
around? All those little dials just spinning around.
It's not a large one. It's just a right size for my pieces that I do. So I only I do those my own
So
piece.
what the kiln will do then is limit the height or the width
Yeah,
of
there's
a piece that you could make.
Yeah. So my limit is on what I do, and how many I do, or I can fire.
Is it more difficult to make bigger pieces?
Yes, it is. Sometimes it is, and it takes a lot more time to do the larger pieces. Like
Yeah, and then if they break or crack.
yeah. So I take my time on making those. Take me like 4 to 5 or a week to get the large ones. And the painting takes a lot more time for the large pieces.
So everything is done before you put the pieces in the kiln.
Yes. it
And
is.
if for some reason there's a little air bubble or a piece of roof that you didn't quite get out completely, or it's too humid outside, or lots of things can go wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just to name a few.
That's just nature taking its course, I guess, too.
That Mother Nature, boy, sometimes she can be such a bad girl.
So you really have to, know what you're doing and take your time in doing it and making your pieces.
Well, how many decades of practice have you had to be able to get to this point?
Well, it took oh my gosh, that's like what, 30?
Yeah.
30 to 40 decades.
Well, I could just sit here and just watch you paint away. So, how old was your son when you first started teaching him?
I think like he was like 30 years old.
Oh, he was 30 years old. Oh, I've talked to a few potters where, they were teaching their kids and the kids were 3 and they wound up eating more of the clay than they did making pots with it.
He was going to school, and he was into sports and a lot of you know
Boy things.
activities in
Yeah.
school. So he didn't want to inside. But I said, it's a living if you want to make a living of this, and I would love to hand it down to you. And he goes, well, if you can teach me, then I'll learn. And
Huh.
so hopefully he'll keep it up.
And believe me, it's not just learning. There has to be some gene in there in the
Yeah,
gene pool
and he's
for talent.
yes, he's got the talent, and I said, just don't waste it away. So, try and try. Don't get frustrated if the design don't come out as you please, and just be patient. Takes a lot of patience too.
So, how many potters do you think there are at Acoma?
Oh my gosh,
Just
there's
to,
quite
just
a
to, maybe a little guess.
And there's a lot of new potters now that are coming out, out of the family. So there's quite a bit.
Well, the idea of what you were saying about making a living. The dollar per hour must be minimal because it just takes so long to do these pieces. And, some potters are so skilled and do such a great job that they can command prices that will afford them to make a living.
Yes,
Being a potter. And probably that's why you're seeing younger people doing it, because, you could do much better by working at McDonald's dollar-wise than by being a potter. But now if you're a really good potter, the situation is very different.
Yes, it is.
A different level of earning. Now the brush, it's so soft.
It is. It is soft, and it's because I had to chew it down and take off some of the other bristles too, to where it makes it softer. And just,
And you get that by chewing?
yeah, by chewing or using your nail. I usually just use my nails to clean it. And under soft, warm water, and then it really softens it up.
Yeah.
And it takes out the bristles more, where you can work with it.
What's it taste like?
It don't taste too great. It's like a bad coffee.
Oh dear, oh dear. And for those of you who just joined us, we are live from Andrea Fisher Fine Pottery in beautiful downtown Santa Fe. And I have with me Miss Sandra Victorino from Acoma Pueblo, and she is painting one of her pieces of pottery. She is our featured artist in this year's Indian Markets show called Women of Distinction. She is alive and well, and obviously a very talented and creative woman who has produced for us some of the most gorgeous pieces of pottery. They're available on our website at AndreaFisherPottery.com, and you can just click on Women of Distinction and see all the pieces that she has available. We've also included in that show a group of women who are no longer working, who were great, great potters, but they are not producing for various reasons anymore. And we have some wonderful pieces of their work. We have another group of women who were some of the very greats from the past, all the way from the turn of the last century up until very recently. And then the last tragic group of of potters, including Christine McCourse, Madeline Naranjo, and Gladys Paquin, who all succumbed to COVID over this pandemic. And by losing them, the American Indian pottery world has lost 3 really lovely people and talented and prolific artists. Anyway, check out all the pieces online and give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. But in the meantime, we get to sit here and talk to Sandra. Sandra, did you ever live on top of the mesa at Acoma?
Yes, we do. We have a house up there at Acoma, and we're right. Our house is right in front of a water hole on the mesa.
Oh, how convenient!
It's a big water hole too, and we have a hard time sometimes getting into our house because of the water hole, and it's just right. Our road is just right around that water hole. And then our house is right there.
Oh, well, you have
and there's a tree, a cotton tree that grows right there in front of the.
Now, the mesa that I'm talking about at Acoma Pueblo is it is probably the core of an old volcano, and it rises 1,000 feet off the floor of the valley in which it's located, and it has been home to Acoma people for thousands of years. In fact, it is believed that it is the longest continuously occupied site in all of this country. And until recently, most of the people from Acoma lived at the top of that fortified mesa, and often described as the Masada of the New World. And it was a great place to defend yourself if there were neighboring tribes that maybe you didn't get along with, and because you can see forever from the top of that mesa. And when the Spaniards arrived here in the late 1500s, Acoma was one of the first places that they visited, and didn't treat the local natives kindly. The understatement of the year, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, the top of the mesa till this day has no water, no electricity, no bathrooms, and it is mainly occupied for religious services, religious activities, and that the families that still own houses at the top of the mesa will occupy it if they are involved in some of the religious activities or during dances. But for the most part, people live in the valley and beyond, the valley below and beyond, on the reservation that is called Acoma Pueblo. And if you ever have a chance to visit the southwest, Acoma Pueblo, along with Taos Pueblo, for 2 different reasons, are really the most spectacular places to visit. Acoma for the view, and Taos for the really interesting architecture that is framed by the Rocky Mountains directly behind it. But did you ever actually live there full time?
Yes, we did one long time ago, like in the 60s. It was when my grandfather was a field chief out there. He had to participate in it for the whole year, or we did. The family, there's more than like 8 of them that have to. 4 of the families that have to stay up there were, to pray for rain and stuff, and for the people. And his name was Leonard Valley, so he was up there. We stayed there with him, because we had to feed him and clothe him and everything like that, and take supplies and stuff for him, as they did this for the whole year, the futures.
Well, and so this is an elected position
Yes,
that
it
he
is.
had? And I know Rebecca Lucario, who also we did some demonstrations and interviews during the pandemic in August during Indian Market, as a substitute for Indian Market last year. And Rebecca Lucario, who was one of our potters, talked about her husband being a war chief, which was an elected position, and he got elected twice. She was not a happy girl then, because the term is usually a full year, and what happens is the men of the tribe do the religious activities, and mostly it's praying for. Mostly it's praying for peace and for the well-being of the members of Acoma Pueblo.
Yes.
And that is a full-time position for them. And so the women's work is to make sure that all of their comforts of home are supplied to them when they are not in those sessions where they pray. And it is, a full-time job for a woman to be the wife of one of these elected officials. But obviously, the Acoma people have been around for thousands of years. I guess it worked, huh?
Yes, it has. It does work, and it helps out the whole tribe and making the rain come, and they pray for the land and pray for the animals, and for all our well-beings, to have prosperous families, for the youth of the elderlies too, it helps for them too. So it's a good.
Well, I think it's a lovely concept.
It is. Huh?
But Rebecca was, talking about the fact that she was a kid and she lived up there, and here you are in this mesa that's 1,000 feet up from the valley floor below, and she said, "Oh, the trouble they used to get in."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no fencing or anything, and throwing rocks over the top was really fun. And but anyway, on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to hear some of the people that talked about their childhood experiences on the res. And we're going to wind this up pretty soon, but we wanted to thank all of you for tuning in, and especially thank Miss Sandra Victorino.
Thank you too, and I hope everyone enjoyed me painting and demonstrating for you. And thank you, Andrea, and to your employees and to the staff and everybody. And I appreciate having have me here to show what I do for you and for our my pottery. And I just pray that, thank you God, and everybody be safe and be blessed for all what you all have gone through for the COVID and all the artwork that's going to be showing this weekend. So everybody have a good art show, and Santa Fe Market will be successful as usual. And I pray for everyone to be happy to enjoy the weekend.
Well, it's such a joy to have you here. And I can say, that Sandra's picture, her pots are beautiful. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. But the person who makes them, you, Sandra, are such a warm and loving and spontaneous and caring person that is such a pleasure to know you. It's a joy to know you, and we look forward every time you come through the door. Of course, we want to see what's inside the laundry basket with all your pieces of pottery, but your company is what's more important to us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I'm always so happy to be here.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to be to come out here and see you as, the way life does. And selling all my artwork and all the artwork you have here is a good challenge for me to look and see what you have. And it's so gracefully happy.
Well, now everybody out there knows that we really like each other. Yay, yay. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be out. This will be up on YouTube, and probably by the end of the day or so. Oh, in about 30 minutes. I don't think the day's going to end in 30 minutes, not at this point. But thank you again, and we'll hopefully see all of you that are tuning in live, in person here in Santa Fe someday soon.
Everyone out there too. I love you, my sisters. I love you both, and my family, my mom, and all my brothers and sisters out there.
Yeah.
And come and enjoy the art show, the market, and come to Andrea's and visit her.
And happy birthday,
Yes,
Aunt Dot.
Dot.
Yeah. Bye.